Thank you and welcome for joining us today. We are grateful to have you here. I am Caitlin Giles McCormick here with the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. Today's session is an informational overview and walkthrough of the NJCOOL program. The goal of the program and the eligible applicants is very specific, which Sean will go into detail about. But if you aren't directly eligible, please keep in mind some of your partners that may be eligible and make sure to check out the many other programs that we have here at NJEDA. Now, to get us started with the content of today's presentation, I'm going to shift things over to Sean Sonnemann, Senior Project Officer of Clean Energy Projects. Sean?
Great, thank you, Caitlin. Appreciate the introduction. And again, thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. Great to see the interest in the program, and hopefully we can answer any questions you may have today and give you a good overview of the program from start to finish, walk through eligibility, and get you ready to apply if you are interested. We do have a full hour for today. Likely won't need the full time, but again, happy to answer questions as they come up as we go through, and we'll answer everything at the end. So as Caitlin mentioned, our NJCOOL program is a piloted program to start with limited geography. This was approved at the November board meeting of the EDA, and we're very excited to walk you through the details today as we prepare for applications to launch next week. So a little bit of background in case anybody perhaps may be unfamiliar, or if this is your first time dealing with the EDA or interacting with any of our programs and products. New Jersey EDA is the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, and as the name implies, we strive to promote economic development and growth in the state through creating good jobs for New Jersey residents, fostering a strong environment for innovation and business development, but also with a key mindset to do that in a way that's equitable and fair and really give everybody a great opportunity for economic development in the state as we make New Jersey competitive at home and abroad. Within that, one of the key sectors for economic growth and development that we focused on is clean energy, and part of the motivation for bringing about this program. So brief agenda for today. We're going to go over some highlights for the program to start, then do a deeper dive into program eligibility, talk about the application, and probably what most people are interested in is how the funding will actually be dispersed. And we'll follow up with some common frequently asked questions and contact information in case you want to have the conversation further beyond this webinar. Okay, so a lot of information on this slide, but if you kind of pay attention to at least one slide, this will capture the bulk of the information that's relevant for the program. So the NJCOOL program is a grant program. We have a $15 million portion of fund initially available for the pilot that is funded by what's known as RGGI, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative that New Jersey participates in, along with several other states in the Northeast. As Caitlin mentioned, we have a limited geography for this program, so this is not open to start to everyone in the state. Really, we're targeting the communities of Newark, Edison, and Atlantic City, which are key sources of commercial buildings in the state, which is the key motivation for this program, but also some of the largest energy users in the state on the commercial side. So big picture, NJCOOL is really looking to tackle greenhouse gas emissions from the commercial building sector in the state. It's one of the top sources of greenhouse gas emissions and other co-pollutants in the state. And as we strive to tackle the causes of climate change in our state and beyond, driving down emissions in the building sector is an important strategy that we need to do that, in addition to looking at other aspects of the economy as well that are sources for emissions. And with that, the NJCOOL program provides funding for commercial building owners and commercial building tenants to tackle the sources of emissions in their buildings and offset some of those expenses that can be significant for building owners as they undertake construction projects. Again, these are just projects in existing buildings, so this is not a program meant to support new construction. but really looking to drive down emissions from buildings that are already in use and in operation in the state. Those grant awards start out at $50,000 and go all the way up to $1 million per project for eligible construction costs. And we'll go into a little more detail about what is an eligible construction cost for the program. The main thing to think about here, though, as well, is that this is a program that's tackling emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, namely carbon dioxide and some other similar sources of greenhouse gas emissions that are due to building operations on site. So think about the emissions that come from the everyday usage of commercial buildings in the state, primarily through heating our building spaces, hot water use in the building, as well as what some people may not be familiar with, refrigerants, which are also a key source of global warming and emissions in the state. And so some of the benefits, as we mentioned directly, we're going to look to reduce the cost of capital improvements for buildings in the state that are eligible for the program. With that, we are reducing greenhouse gas emissions, which are a key source of ongoing climate change, but also can improve air quality, both indoor and outdoor within the building, as well as potentially reduce building energy costs, all with the goal of accelerating the adoption of building decarbonization systems, technologies, and construction practices with New Jersey. A key point as well, if those of you who are familiar with the existing utility and incentive programs that are available through the BPU Clean Energy Program in the state, this award can stack on top of most of those programs. So really, we are trying to get the maximum benefit to building owners and tenants in the state who are looking to improve their properties. So let's dive in a little bit more into the program details. So what kind of projects are eligible for NJ Cool, and how do I structure my construction project to be able to participate in the program and get that grant money that we want to put to work here at the EDA? So there's two pathways to be eligible for the program. One is through participating in fuel switching in your building, which, as the name might imply, switching your heating systems in the building from a combustion-based system that uses fossil fuels, think about heavy heating oil or natural gas to power your existing boiler or furnace in the building, and you're going to switch 75% of that heating load to a non-combustion based alternative. And those alternatives have little to no direct operating emissions when they're put in use. Air source heat pumps, geothermal energy systems, these are some common examples of alternative heating systems that are out there that would be eligible for the program. Important to note that we are not looking for 100% switching of that heating load. 75% is that key number. So you can still have a combined heating system. Say I have an electric air source heat pump for the majority of my heating requirements, or 75% when it came to this program, and I still have a combined heating system with a, say, a natural gas fired system for backup or any of those really extreme peak heating days that are required. So that's option one. Option two is looking at the cooling system in your building. So within building systems that rely on refrigeration, either for space cooling or for commercial cold storage, think about a supermarket refrigerant display case. Those systems used refrigerants that are also equally damaging, if not more so, to the environment when they are leaked into the atmosphere. So with this program, we're looking at both the heating and the fuel switching option and the cooling system as replacing 75% of an existing high global warming potential refrigerant with a lower alternative that is more environmentally friendly. For this program, we've defined high global warming potential refrigerants as 2,000 or greater. And that's something that's documented either by nationally recognized sources such as the EPA or supply information from your refrigerant components. So to participate in the program, you need to at least be doing one of these items in your retrofit project for your existing building. You can also, of course, do both, but only one is required to trigger eligibility and participate in the program. Now, the great part about that we've hopefully designed the program is that once you check one of those boxes, either through fuel switching or refrigerant replacement, that unlocks a number of other measures that you can submit to the program for reimbursement that are more of your typical energy efficiency measures in buildings or other options that reduce on-site emissions from building operations. This can include typical energy efficiency measures such as replacing lighting with more efficient options, commonly done with LED retrofits, to conducting weatherization or building envelope improvements to improve the insulation of your building and how much heating and cooling is required, to heat recovery equipment being installed, intelligent building management systems or energy load controls in your building, as well as maybe some less common energy efficiency measures or emissions reduction measures that are not covered always. And that includes installing on-site renewable energy generation systems or energy storage systems. That could be solar panels with a battery storage system in conjunction with that. And even replacing further some of those fossil fuel powered appliances that may not be part of building space heating, but could also be used, and replacing those with electric powered alternatives. So the goal really here is that once you check one of the primary eligibility boxes, you can stack on top of that any number of these additional measures, including others that you can show that demonstrate improve energy efficiency or reduce emissions in the building. This is not an exhaustive list, but are just some examples of things that you can think about as you participate in the program. And again, these are optional, not required. You can submit a eligible project that just has one of these two items, A or B. So who is eligible to apply and what kind of buildings are we talking about here? So the direct applicant to the program is going to be the building owner or a commercial tenant that has approval of the owner of the building to participate and apply to the program, making sure that the underlying building owner understands what work is being done and has approved that work as well to be completed in the building. Again, we're looking just at retrofits here, not new constructions or enlargements of existing buildings. We're trying to tackle emissions from buildings that are already in use. And again, very important, this is a limited geography pilot, so we're just looking at existing buildings within Newark, Edison, and Atlantic City for this initial phase of the pilot. Depending on how the pilot goes and additional feedback we may receive, that geography may be changed in the future, but for right now, that is the only eligible locations, and those buildings must be within the township or city proper of those three municipalities. Important to note as well that for construction work that is being completed and seeking reimbursement from the NJCOOL grant award, it has to be done by public works registered contractors in the state that are complying with all state prevailing wage and affirmative action requirements per the state and the Jersey EDA. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but a key distinction that in terms of who can participate doing the actual construction work on these projects. Important to note as well is that this program is geared towards commercial buildings. And we've defined that in a way that is hopefully clear based on building code occupancy classes. So each building space in New Jersey, once it's approved and installed, receives an occupancy class that is in alignment with the New Jersey Building Code. For this initial NJCOOL pilot, we've limited that to these three occupancy classes: Mercantile Group M, Assembly Group A2, and Business Group B. Those three building occupancy classes include the examples shown here on screen that are defined by the building code, but again, are not necessarily exhaustive. So how do you know what occupancy class your building is? This is an information that should be documented on an existing certificate of occupancy for the building, perhaps an existing building permit, or if you're in doubt, you can reach out to your local building authority within town or city, and they can also offer some clarity and guidance for what your building may be. But again, based on the list shown on screen, this covers a wide range of types of buildings, everything from retail and your everyday commercial stores that interact with the general public, to restaurants, dining facilities, and bars, as well as a number of other commercial building types from banks and barber and beauty shops to office space and dry cleaning facilities and laundries. Again, this is a limited pilot, so this list may change in the future, but for the initial pilot phase of this program, your building must fall within one of these building occupancy classes. Key question that may likely come up is, what if my building has multiple occupancy classes within it, which is quite common for mixed-use buildings? You may still be eligible to participate in the program, but your building must at least have one of these 3 occupancy classes within it, and any improvements that you are making should impact then the whole building, not just other space within the building that is not this occupancy class. For example, if you had a mixed-use building that had a ground floor retail space and several apartments in higher levels in the building, improvements really should be focused on the ground floor retail space, and any overall full building improvements that happen to also impact the apartments are acceptable for the program, but you could not submit a project that just focuses on the apartment space in that building without also touching the ground floor retail space within the same building itself. So what is an eligible project cost that you can receive funding for as part of the NJCOOL program? We've defined this as really hard construction cost. So that's materials, labor, and equipment that is being expended as part of the actual construction project. Now that can be materials, labor, and equipment that is provided by the contractor, and in some cases, equipment and material that is being procured directly by the applicant, i.e. the building owner or the commercial tenant, and not going through a contractor. Either way, though, it's hard construction costs that are related to emissions reduction and energy efficiency improvements. Key point, as well as you've seen on the slide here, that also does include enabling work that may be necessary to have these improvements undertaking. For example, if you are installing rooftop solar panels or an improved HVAC system on the roof of your building, and you need some structural improvements done to allow that work to occur, that structural improvement work would indeed be eligible under the program as considered enabling work, even though the actual structural improvement itself doesn't really impact emissions or energy efficiency of the building. Again, this is materials, labor, and equipment, so hard construction costs that can be submitted for reimbursement as part of the program. What are ineligible project costs? Those are really everything else that's part of your construction project that does not fall within that category. This includes any soft costs for the project, which could include energy audits, inspection fees, commissioning fees, or permitting, as well as general interior finish improvements that are not related to energy work on the project, or other building system upgrades that are not related to energy efficiency, such as installing fire sprinklers. Again, great that you are doing this part of work of your building, but based on the funding source for this program, we really have to tie what we are providing funding for to energy and emissions reductions. Additionally, any furniture, non-permanent items that are being installed as part of the project, such as desks, chairs, cabinets, etc., would not be eligible. And important to note, energy efficiency improvements that were completed before your application was formally approved would not be eligible as well. This program is looking to reimburse expenses for energy efficiency improvements and work undertaken after your NJCOOL application has been approved by the EDA. I mentioned before that we are requiring for this program, in accordance with New Jersey state law, that all construction work and contractors must be completed by Public Works registered contractors that are registered with Department of Labor. If anybody is unfamiliar with that, it's a common contractor designation for those who are participating in state-funded construction projects. There are currently over 5,500 registered contractors in the state. And what means is that these contractors are registered with the Department of Labor. They've agreed to pay prevailing wage for a project, which is going to be set by the county and trade level. And in addition, any contractor on the project must abide by affirmative action requirements that if they consist of 4 or more total employees. If you are not familiar with this or don't have a contractor in mind, but are interested in participating in the program, we have started a list of public works registered contractors who understand the NJ Cool program guidelines and have expressed interest in participating in those projects. Should help you start your search, but again, by no means limited to that initial list on our website. Any public works registered contractor who is in compliance with prevailing wage and affirmative action regulations can participate in your project. So let's dive a bit more in the application and disbursement process. If you've reviewed the eligibility requirements and determined that, yes, my project is a fit and my building is a fit for the program, how do I go about applying? So as I mentioned in the beginning, we're excited to announce that applications for the program are going to open on Monday, April 22nd. That's this coming Monday at 10 a.m. Fittingly coincides with Earth Day celebrations, as this program is really geared towards reducing greenhouse gas emissions and helping to protect our Earth against the ongoing impacts of climate change. Application is completed and submitted fully online through the EDA website. You can find the actual application link on Monday, again, not beforehand, at the NJ Cool program webpage, which is njeda.gov/NJCool. I will note the application submission does require a non-refundable $1,000 application fee, and that can be paid by credit card as you participate and complete the application online. Do encourage you to, in addition to viewing this webinar, read through thoroughly all the application materials and frequently ask questions before beginning your application. The good thing, though, is that you can start your application, save it, and come back and revisit it at a later date after starting. If you have any questions before submitting your application or need some clarity on the eligibility requirements, happy to send us a note at the program email account at njcool@njeda.gov, and we'll try to get back to you as quickly as possible to clarify anything before you start working on your application. Once applications are in, we really can't answer any additional questions as we review, but we'll be in touch with you as quickly as possible to give you an update on your application review. So there's a few steps that are involved in the application process. Step 1 is, of course, preparing and submitting the application itself, which will require the details for the building that you are looking to work in, what your project consists of. We ask that you prepare some information on how energy efficiency improvements will be made and greenhouse gas emissions will be reduced through the building project, and provide cost estimates for what the project itself is expected to entail. Once that information is compiled and submitted through the online application, we will review at the EDA, reach out if there's any clarifying information that's needed, and hopefully give you a speedy approval to reach on to the next phase. Given that this program is a reimbursement-based grant, basically we pay you back for construction that is completed and costs that you as the applicant have already spent. We do require that the applicant demonstrates that they have proof of funding for the project cost upfront, just to ensure that the application is complete and that the project can occur before that reimbursement funding is made. So once your application is initially approved, we'll give you 2 months to demonstrate proof of funding for that project upfront. So that's something that, likely you already have started working on as you were preparing, undertaking your project in your building, but we do give you some additional time to get that funding together once you have initial application approval. Important to note that this would be for the whole project, not necessarily just the portions that are eligible under the program. And we do require a demonstration of an additional 15% of funding upfront, just for any contingency for potential cost overruns that may come up during the course of the project, and kind of the unknown nature of construction, especially in retrofit projects within existing building spaces. So once you've demonstrated to us as the applicant that you have that upfront funding to be able to complete the project, you'll enter into a formal grant agreement with the EDA, which outlines the terms of the program and what is required to participate and receive your grant funding. Once that agreement is signed, there'll be a 6-month timeline for you to start construction on site at your building. So again, as you may have seen from the first few steps, applying to this program is when you have a project that is ready to go, ready to get started. The design has to be fully baked. Your contractors have to be selected and provided quotes for you. And we really look to have the project start right away once that funding and grant agreement is in place. Now, for the part that I'm sure is of interest to many, how do I get the grant funding, as I complete my construction project? So we'll be distributing the grant funding in 2 phases. One, it's during what's called an interim disbursement or a first disbursement of funding. And that will be when up to 1/2 of the grant award will be dispersed to the applicant as they submit proof of actual expenses occurred. Again, as I mentioned in the beginning, the grant award is a reimbursement at a 50% rate. So for example, if you had an expense that was eligible of $100 and you submitted proof of expense to the EDA, you would receive $50 back as part of the grant award. The second disbursement, or the remaining balance of the grant award, is available when the project is fully completed. And we do have a timeline for the program that once project construction commences on site, we ask that project construction be completed within 2 years. Again, with some possibility for extensions if there are extenuating circumstances that have led to a delay and an ability not to meet that timeline. So just to recap, as the applicant, you apply to the program with all the details for your project and your building. You demonstrate through cost estimates for your project what your eligible expenses will be, and a requested grant award, which will be 1/2 of that eligible expenses amount. Upon approval, you will have 2 months to demonstrate proof of funding for the project, plus an additional 15% contingency. Enter an agreement with the EDA. Construction should start on site within 6 months of entering to that agreement. And then the grant award itself will be dispersed in 2 phases. Once, when about 1/2 of the expenses have been incurred by the project, and the balance upon construction completion. So as you're preparing to submit your application, we put a list together here of all the required documents that will be needed to be submitted when you are filling out the application online. Again, all of this information can be found on the NJ Cool program website, as well as these slides will be updated later with a recording of the webinar. So again, you can consult this at a later date, but this gives you every document that you can start getting ready together as you are preparing to apply. And really, this is just ensuring that demonstrating you are eligible for the program, providing details on your project, and sufficient estimates for the cost of the project and how you are applying for the grant award. If you're familiar with the EDA and have been a part of programs before, as a business and commercial entity, valid tax clearance certificate is part of the program and needs to be submitted in time for application approval. So if you are still working on that during your actual application, but you want to get your application in, that can be provided after the fact. And again, this list is posted on our NJ Cool program website, as well as will be uploaded after this webinar. So one of the items in that list is an emissions and energy calculations. So given the type of work being involved and the source of funding for this program, we need to demonstrate what the operating emissions reductions will be as part of the project and the nature of the work being completed. So we require that these calculations be prepared by a qualified professional, not the applicant directly, but someone working on behalf of the applicant. And we've tried to make this as streamlined as possible. We've uploaded program guidance on the NJCool website for how this should be calculated. The final summary form is just one page with the relevant numbers, and we have a review guide for explaining how these calculations can be completed. Use the word qualified professional, so that can be any number of persons, either a licensed engineer or architect in the state of New Jersey or otherwhere, as well as a certified energy auditor, certified energy manager, energy management professional, or a building energy assessment professional, or a similarly qualified professional that you would like to submit as a person who is completing these on your behalf. Again, all this information gets uploaded with the application as part of your submission to the program. So finally, we're going to go through some frequently asked questions, and we'll just recap a couple key tenets of the program. One, as I mentioned before, how is the program funded? The program is funded by the regional greenhouse gas initiatives in the state, and reducing emissions from the building sector in New Jersey was a key tenet of the funding plan for that source of funding. So this program is in line with the 23 to 25 funding plan that was released with feedback from the public, and of which building decarbonization was a key priority. Second common question, can I participate in this program and also participate in other building energy efficiency programs in the state? Yes. The great answer is that these programs can be stacked in most cases. The only exceptions are the large energy users program and the gut rehab option of the new construction program, which are part of the BPU's clean energy program. Those are excluded just given the nature and the size of those awards, but any number of these smaller incentives can be stacked with the NJCool award. Again, we just ask as part of your application, you report what incentive payments you expect to receive, and those will be factored into the final calculation of your NJCool grant award, but can be received together. Again, reminder, applications are opening on Monday at 10 a.m. and funding is going to be available on a first come, first served basis. So if you are interested in applying, there is no deadline, but we do encourage you to apply as soon as you can, because funding will be given out on a first come, first served basis. As I mentioned, the program is starting out with a $15 million pilot. We do have an optional $15 million that can be contributed toward the program if there are significant demand. And again, we hope to add additional geographies and building types to the program in the future if you are listening and your program not eligible under the current requirements. As I said before, there is no deadline. Applications are accepted on a rolling basis, so do apply as soon as you are able. And again, a reminder that new construction projects are not eligible for the program. This would just be existing buildings that are looking to make improvements on their property. And finally, again, a key reminder, this is just eligible for commercial buildings in Newark, Edison, and Atlantic City. But if you are interested in a project that otherwise you think would cover these guidelines, we do ask you to please let us know, that this will help us potentially design the program in the future, or there may be other NJEDA clean energy programs or other programs in the state that we can point you to and provide some also additional financial assistance. We greatly appreciate your interest in taking on this kind of work, as energy efficiency improvements and emissions reductions are so important, and we want to make sure that you are utilizing as many resources are available to you as part of that project. Again, just key reminder, these grant awards start at $50,000 all the way up to 1 million per project. But if your project is a much larger project, you can still be eligible, just that's in a cap for that award amount at $1 million. And that grant award, again, is on a 50% reimbursement basis. So for example, if your project eligible expenses were expected to cost $200,000, your grant award would be $100,000 for that type of work. If you have any questions or inquiries beyond this webinar or beyond this call, again, we encourage you to reach out to the program email at njcool@njeda.gov. And if you're not already familiar with the NJEDA or other programs that touch on a variety of topics beyond clean energy, we do encourage you to stay in touch, follow us on our social media accounts, routinely check on the NJEDA website, and get on our mailing list to really utilize so many of these offerings that can help you grow your business in the state and also contribute to the overall economy in the state. Again, thank you so much for joining this webinar, and we're very excited as we prepare to launch this program next week. And I do see we have a couple Q&A in the chat, so I will take a look at those now. First question was, is implementing option A and or B required for C eligibility? The answer is yes, and we'll just tab back to that slide to remind people of what that question was talking about. So again, the key scope criteria would be that you must be doing A and or B before you are eligible for C in terms of your project scope. So again, you must be participating in either the fuel switching or refrigerant replacement before you can receive grant awards for energy efficiency improvements and similar on-site renewable, etc. Second question, are K to 12th grade charter schools eligible for the program? So again, the eligibility is really based on building occupancy class. And again, without knowing the details of the building that you're looking at, most likely those will not fall under one of these three categories. That is likely going to be under an educational occupancy class that is separate from these three. But if your building does fall under these building occupancy classes, it would be eligible. In most cases, I would say charter schools are not, but there may be some exceptions to that rule. All right, other questions in the chat. Does the program cover conversion from an existing office use to a residential use? Good question. We will have to take a look at that. That is honestly not a question we've had before. So Philip, I will get back to you on that, and we will add that to our frequently asked questions on the program website to let you know in the future. Okay, next question in the chat. If a $200,000 project receives a $100,000 utility incentive, how much grant money is the project eligible for? Good question. So the grant award will take into account other incentives you are receiving. As I said, we can stack those awards, but just that would be subtracted out from your eligible project costs. So in this case, the $200,000, assuming all those expenses were eligible, we would subtract out the $100,000 grant utility incentive being received for that. That would leave $100,000 of eligible expenses, and you would receive $50,000 grant money for that project from the NJCOOL program. So again, it's based on a 50% rate after subtracting out for other incentives that are being received for that project. And just additional question, can you qualify for this grant as well as other EDA grants? Yes, so you can, in most cases, participate in the EDA NJ Cool program and other EDA programs. We just will have to look closely at the details for that. So I won't say in all cases, but yes, in most cases, it is okay to participate in other EDA programs as well as the NJ Cool program. Okay, it looks like that is all of the immediate questions in the chat. And again, we will add those to our frequently asked questions, especially for the ones that we will need to look more into detail on. And those will be posted to our website following this webinar. So unless there are any other questions, we can wrap up the webinar. And again, I thank you all for joining this afternoon. Very excited about launching this program and appreciate your interest in supporting NJ Cool program in New Jersey.